Dario Argento is a name that I've been aware of in my film collecting, but this is the first of his that I've actually sat down to watch for obvious reasons. So I really wasn't so sure what to expect with it. I just tried to go into it with an open mind and this hope that it was going to give me something different. Put a fresh spin on everything for me. Um, and it also reminded me that I really need to be careful what I wish for, because frankly, this is it. This is my personal travesty of an adaptation. And I'm not saying that just to dog on somebody's art, right? I completely and totally understand that you got to do whatever it is you got to do to ensure that your creative vision for this thing stands out against all the rest. And to that end, I would say that I think it was successful, albeit not for the greatest reasons. Um, and I think the best place to begin would be with the least abhorrent of its sins, which is that this movie doesn't really have a traditional love triangle in it. Historically, it's always been um, a variation of one of two things. Either the Phantom is this vile, horrible monster. Raoul is the hero that swoops in to save the day, and he and Christine ride off into the sunset together. Or she is at the center of this romantic tug of war between two handsome suitors. Here, they don't really have all of their backstory. They don't have this long history, this childhood friendship that kind of keeps them connected and drawn to one another. They pretty much only know each other through their societal position. She, of course, is the understudy at the opera, and he belongs to an upper class political family. But it's obvious that he is pining for her affections, and she, in so many words, declines. It does give us some good things, though. For one, I get my scene of Raoul having his little breakdown um, in the brothel or bathhouse or whatever you want to call it. And there is actually a full-blown sex scene between Christine and the Phantom. So for us Love Never Dies people, we can confirm that Gustav is probably conceived for that other timeline. Um, but the reason I'm more forgiving about this is because even though it kind of takes its own path in getting there, it does ultimately end up in the same place the book does, with Raoul turning his rejection into anger, obsession, and really this passion towards Christine. I just don't think it works as well as it should, and it's very frustrating because the his Raoul's counterpart in it is so weak. The Phantom's character, all the way around, is like this black hole that just sucks down um, any any and all potential that this movie had to be good with him. And now you might be asking yourself, how is that possible? How is it that someone could manage to so colossally F up the most important character to the story? Well, for starters, as far as I'm able to tell, he doesn't have a physical deformity. That major plot device that causes him to loathe both himself and the rest of humanity, while at the same time trying to desperately satisfy this deep desire to be loved. Yeah, it's not there. The movie actually opens up with his parents floating him down the gutter into the catacombs of the opera house for no real explained reason, though if I had to guess, I would say that they either flat out didn't want him or maybe were unable to care for him on some level. It doesn't really say. Um, but while I was watching this, it did kind of bring forth a thought in my head. Okay, so this person has nothing to hide, no shame to cover up, with a mask, nothing like that. Which would mean that this seemingly normal child is just gallivanting around the bowels of the opera house, here, there, and everywhere, and nobody notices him. Nobody has the idea or offers to take him in, reintegrate him into society, and make sure he is okay and give him this happy ending, right? And I understand if that was the case, the movie would be like 5 minutes long, and then we wouldn't have much of a video. Um, but it just kind of struck me as odd. Uh, this is also the scene that emphasizes particularly the rats in the area. But put a pin in that, and I'll circle back to it in just a moment. Because you know what he does have? What he lacks in horrific, ugly birth defect, he gains in what I refer to as supernatural powers. To start, he apparently, whenever he gets close to a room or draws near, it gets ice cold. People can feel a chill on their skin or running down their spine because, of course, he can. Why wouldn't he? I'm fairly certain that's required in order to be a phantom. But if that's not bad enough, he is able to telepathically communicate with Christine, apparently, which I can recognize that it's probably meant to be more of a creative play or an artistic decision based on the well-known uh, thing about the Phantom being able to lurk through the many secret passageways of the opera house, to reappear behind walls and mirrors and things like that. But it's just super ridiculous to have Christine sitting there on the stage during a rehearsal like this, having a full-blown conversation back and forth with the Phantom that only she can hear. But despite all that, I did have a splinter of hope left when it came to the good old-fashioned spaghetti-style gore, the over-exaggerated violence. And I saw that, and I thought to myself, thank God. At the very least, they've managed to get that aspect of the Phantom's personality or character right. Um, that was until I investigated a little bit closer and rewatched some of his scenes a couple times over to see really what he was doing, and I noticed that his method of choice when it comes to maiming and murder was to scratch and or gnaw on people like a rat. Because you know what his great shame in life is? He was raised by rats, like some sort of effed up version of Mowgli or Tarzan or something. Essentially, he is just a weird guy who lives in the basement with rats. This movie actually has the audacity to expect you, the viewer, to suspend your disbelief, your judgments, your criticisms, and buy into the fact, the ridiculous idea that somehow this horde of rodents was able to sustain this human man, this human being, um, from infancy all the way to seemingly healthy adulthood. And I promise you, whatever weird, bizarre, gross thoughts that brings to mind, whatever imagery you have, I promise that it is probably correct because, yes, it goes there. And honest to God, at this point in the movie, I found myself genuinely hoping that by the end of it, the rats were going to uh, transform into demons or something. Because as weird as that would be, I would at least be able to grasp on to some sort of logic. Because really, if you think about it, let's just say they weren't rats, and instead they were these uh, malevolent entities, right? That would explain how, at least in some manner, how they were able to sustain him, to take care of him. And then there's the idea that, like, okay, the more they nurtured him, the stronger he got, and they either eventually granted him those supernatural powers, or he just kind of grew into them the more that he um, suckled, or whatever gross verbiage you want to use for that. Um, I'm obviously not saying that would be a great option, but it would at least, in many aspects, probably save the movie for me. Because in my mind, it's like if we are going this deep into the bizarre that this movie is trying to do, uh, why not just go full tilt boogie with it? Why not go all the way and just say they're not rats, they're actually demonic beings, paranormal, interdimensional beings, whatever, that raised him, that watched out for him, and turned him into the guy that he is. I don't know. I would really love to know if there's anybody else out there that has seen this movie, that is familiar with this movie. I'd love to know what your opinion is. More specifically, I would love to know your opinion on my opinion. Am I missing something that makes this movie good? Is this a cinematic masterpiece that I'm just not connecting with? Am I being too harsh or bitchy about it? I would love to know. But until then, guys, we will see you, as always, in the next video.